Thank you very much, Doug and panelists. And everybody should know that Doug went out of his way to get here this morning. As I understand, his plane from New York was diverted to Harrisburg or something. I know it is. Well, thank you very much for making the effort here. Let us close out then with Commissioner of the Commodity Futures Trading, Russ Beam. Russ was confirmed by the Senate to that position last August, and his term ends in June of 2021, just in time for LIBOR either ending or not ending. I don't know today. Now, Russ was served as a senior counsel for the U.S. Senator, one of my favorites up there, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, ranking member on the Agriculture and Natural Resources and Forestry Committee. He began there in 2021 before he was confirmed last year to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And prior to serving with Senator Stabenow, he practiced law in New York City and worked at the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General. Russ, please close us out here, and I have a few last comments after.
Thanks, Bill. Good coincidence that my term ends 2021. I didn't think about that, but thanks again, Bill, for the introduction. I want to thank Scott O'Malley and ISDA for hosting this event with Bipartisan Policy Institute. It's a great honor to be here, a center that I've relied on for many years, as long as I've been in DC, and something that, as we've learned today, to be able to have consensus-driven thoughts is really important generally, but specifically with this issue. This morning's discussion has highlighted that reference rates, despite being little known outside of discrete financial circles, are a crucial component of the global economic ecosystem, woven into countless products that touch the lives of nearly every American. Given the everyday consumer use of these financial products, the past findings of benchmark fraud and manipulation have real-world impacts on consumers. Reference rate reform requires an all-hands-on-deck approach to ensure American consumers do not feel the weight of misaligned or manipulated reference rates. To me, reference rate reform can be summed up in one word: trust. In the coming years, market participants, regulators, and end users must leverage all available resources to find consensus-driven solutions that will restore transparency, credibility, and above all else, accuracy. In a word, trust, to ensure reference rates properly reflect fair and equitable borrowing costs. With this in mind, I cannot think of a better venue to trust than BPC to host today's discussion. The CFTC has been working diligently as a member of the Official Sector Steering Group, the coordinating body set up by the Financial Stability Board in 2013 to drive the reform effort. To that end, I want to recognize the tremendous work of the ARC and also the work done by the Fed, the Treasury Department, UK's Financial Conduct Authority, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, and other leaders and regulators around the world. Given the Financial Conduct Authority's decision to no longer compel banks to submit to LIBOR at the end of 2021, we only have a few years to reach consensus and lay the foundations for the next generation of reference rates. Since allegations of benchmark manipulation first surfaced nearly a decade ago, the CFTC has been at the forefront of the global effort to eliminate fraud and manipulation within the rate-setting process. Since June 2012, the CFTC has levied sanctions of more than $3.3 billion against LIBOR-related misconduct. These important enforcement actions, initiated by prior CFTC leadership and continued to current CFTC leadership, have not only addressed the bad actions of numerous individuals, but also a failure of financial institutions to police their employees. Personally, I have recently provided a forum for additional discussion of LIBOR through the CFTC's Market Risk Advisory Committee, or the MRAC as it's more commonly known. At the CFTC, each commissioner sponsors an advisory committee to provide input and make recommendations to the commission on a variety of regulatory and market issues that affect the integrity and competitiveness of U.S. markets. The MRAC advises the commission on matters relating to evolving market structures and the movement of risk across clearinghouses, exchanges, intermediaries, market makers, and end users. In July, I convened the MRAC to focus on benchmark reform in an effort to unpack the myriad impending issues specifically related to the derivatives market. As a starting point, members of the ARC and key market participants first discussed the role of interest rate benchmarks in the economy, the impetus for LIBOR reform, and the current status of global reform initiatives. The discussion focused on the efforts of the Financial Stability Board and the ARC, as well as public and private sector coordination efforts in other jurisdictions. A second panel of speakers addressed the development of SOFR and SOFR-related products since April. A final panel discussed the effort of LIBOR reform on the derivatives markets. The discussion focused on LIBOR reform's impact on legacy derivatives contracts, the development of fallback language, and key risk management and governance considerations for market participants. End user and dealer representatives discussed the risks their firms and clients face with respect to LIBOR reform and how they or their clients are preparing to mitigate those risks. And just last week, the Commission approved my effort to establish the Interest Rate Benchmark Reform Subcommittee to provide reports and recommendations to the MRAC regarding ongoing efforts to transition U.S. dollar derivatives and related contracts to SOFR and the impact of such transition on the markets generally. I'm excited to lead this effort and start the next steps towards convening market experts from all disciplines to assist the MRAC and ultimately the Commission to find regulatory solutions within the jurisdiction of the CFTC to ensure a smooth transition to an alternative risk-free reference rate. Topics and issues this subcommittee may consider include the treatment under Title VII of Dodd-Frank of existing derivatives contracts that are amended to include new fallback provisions or otherwise reference risk-free rates such as SOFR and new derivatives contracts that reference risk-free rates. The subcommittee also may consider the impact of the transition on liquidity in derivatives and related markets. I'm currently seeking nominations for membership on the subcommittee to ensure it benefits from the expertise of a diverse and skilled body of individuals. My goal is to use the subcommittee to complement the work of the ARC by shedding more light on the potential challenges heading towards 2021, identifying the risks for financial markets and individual American consumers, and above all else, providing solutions within the derivatives market. My expectation is that the subcommittee's work and that of the Commission itself will recognize the critical importance of benchmarks while demanding integrity and reliability. There are a number of clear-cut outstanding issues to the treatment of legacy derivatives that can benefit from in-depth discussions within the MRAC, including margin requirements, mandatory clearing, trade execution, and reporting. Further, it's critical that the CFTC, through the MRAC, establish a robust record in order to resolve and defend any regulatory changes that potentially lie ahead. In the past decade, American consumers have overcome significant economic challenges as a result of the financial crisis. On the heels of the crisis, as consumers struggled with these challenges, benchmark fraud and manipulation further eroded trust between consumers and the financial industry. I'm determined to work within the context of reference rate reform to help rebuild trust by shedding light on the importance of reference rates to consumers and facilitating an inclusive, bipartisan conversation to resolve issues related to derivatives markets. In that light, I'm certain the CFTC, and more specifically the MRAC, can play an important supporting role of all the work that has been done dating back more than 5 years, but certainly a lot of work ahead in the next few. Thanks for your time.
And thank you, Commissioner. And BPC, we offer BPC to assist you and MRAC in whatever way we can to make this a bipartisan effort, which I think it should be a bipartisan. Thank you again, Scott and ISTA, and for your support of this discussion. I want to close out here very quickly by thanking the BPC staff and consultants, particularly John Sharusian, Senior Policy Analyst for our financial regulatory reform work we do here, Dora Engler, Emily Schroeder over there, along with Justin Schraden, Greg Wilson, and Jim Savan, our advisors. Thank you all. I started the day by saying I did not know anything about this issue, but I've learned a little bit more. Hopefully, going forward, that we can make this a good transition, at least either in 2021 or we don't know when, but sometime in the future here. Thank you very much.